What's up, guys? I got a new project. Surprise. I don't know if it was the best purchase I ever made, but we're gonna find out. I picked it up for a pretty good deal, and we could not get it to turn over, couldn't get it to turn over, poking around a little bit, and we found that the timing belt was not spinning. So that was the first thing we tried to tackle. We went into it, we tore the whole side of it open, down into get to the timing belt. First, we just cracked the timing belt cover open right here. The little plastic guard that goes on it. This one here, it's like a butterfly looking one that goes to both sides of the dual overhead cams. So we just took a flathead in there, opened her up, and cranked it over a little bit, and you could see that the belt wasn't even spinning. So we took it off, and there's no teeth on it. So that kind of sucks, because with that, these engines, they are interference motors. So when the timing belt stops turning and stops turning the cams, then your lifters stop lifting up and down to let in air exhaust, fuel air exhaust. And when the cam lobes are pushing the valves down, the piston comes up for compression or exhaust stroke, and it hits the valves. So we went ahead and put the belt on there, just kind of hoping for the best. You could probably see from the belt that it wasn't really the best outcome. I believe that there are some valves locked down, hitting the pistons when they come up. We can give it a turnover with the key. We did install the new timing belt and a new timing belt tensioner. It did turn over. No, it did not sound right, and ultimately it ended up locking up. So I believe initially the belt failed, and in turn maybe bent the valves a little bit, and then when I finally cranked it over, it ran for a few seconds and then locked up. So now I go to turn the key, and the starter will not turn it over. So what I did was go down on the crank bolt, and I counterclockwise turned it backwards, and I can go, about 75% of the way, and the crank just stops. And same with the other way. So I think in the end, obviously I need to pull these heads off and see what my valves look like. At least see if I can noticeably see that they're locked up. I don't know. I don't really think there's anything else. I was hoping I didn't have to tear into this thing that much, but that's just the way she goes. So on this side with the timing belt, you see that you take those covers off. This is like a dust cover, whatever, down by the CV axle. And then there's another lower one right here that actually shows your timing marks that goes down on the harmonic balancer side. So you can take all those off. You will take off the tensioner pulley here I just left the serpentine belt in there. And then when we installed the new one, we actually took off the tensioner. There's a timing tensioner pulley in there, which is bolted at the lower side. We actually unbolted that after taking the timing tensioner piston off. So this bolts on the side like that. And when you pull this pin, this piston pushes up and actually puts leverage on one of the pulley arms down there. And then that pulley is what pushes against the timing belt, which keeps it tight. I ended up buying a new one of these because I don't know if this old one is why the old tensioner or the old timing belt failed. If this goes bad, it doesn't put as much tension on the timing belt, and when you're driving this thing or you go to start it, it's going to chew up those teeth on that belt because there's not as much tension that needs to be on there. So again, we took off that piston, the tensioning piston. We took off the tensioning pulley. It was actually made it really easy to install the new belt. Had the timing marks lined up. You got white dots here on your cam. Gears, and then down on the bottom there is a little, well, I got the tire back on, but there's a little lip on the crank gear. Down on that gear down there behind the harmonic balancer, you'll see there's a little lip on the ring that lines up with another timing mark down there. So guess we'll tear into it. Also, this has to come off. The motor mount on this side does. You can't get the new timing belt in there without taking that off. So support the bottom of the engine. You take, there's a nut here, those two, and that one. This comes off, and then there's 4 more that go in the block from the passenger side that hold this a bottom bracket on there, and that's how it all ties together. But once all that's off and out of the way, and you can manage keeping this from falling down on your knuckles, you should be just fine to get in there and tackle the timing belt. As far as the heads go, just looking at the top end here, obviously you got to take your intake manifold off, and you have your front 3 here, and the back 3 is going to be the bad one. But I don't know, when you get into doing stuff like this, it doesn't seem to always go like it should. I should have expected the worst, but it was worth a shot. Now I know when it is done, it'll have the new valve set, and then the head gaskets and valve cover gaskets, and the new timing belt, obviously, and the timing belt tensioner. So in the end, when it is done, I'm hoping that I can make this all worth it. It's a clean little car. It's a 2006 Hyundai Tucson with brand new tires. So I don't know. We'll see what we can do. See if we can make it worth our time, worth my time, and we'll post back. But hopefully we can get it on the road. The lovely fuel prices right now kind of make me more motivated to actually fix this thing. That'll be a lot nicer than driving around the old trailer puller. So let's dig into it. Well, pretty sure I found the issue. I did decide to obviously tear the valve covers off so I could see a little bit of the internals, see what I'm kind of working with, and in doing so, we can see that I don't know what's going on with these heads. Maybe one was replaced before or something. I'm not sure. But pretty different looking quality going on here. You took the intake manifold off. That's this here. If you guys are doing this, this is the front. You got a few 12 millimeters here. These are nuts on the block, or the heads. And then in the back, you're not going to be able to get it off because these ones back here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And I kind of had a bit of a hard time to get to them because they're up under there into the firewall area. So you can lean over and get to them on these brackets here and here and here. And I ended up taking the throttle body off. Has a little gasket in there. On this side, intake manifold has this gasket, at least the top part. Those are the nuts on the intake manifold. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. There's nothing too crazy. This one hooked to there's like a bracket up under here on this guy. That little tab is where that went on to. I took that off and was able to undo that plug there for the injectors. And so digging around, I figured I would take the plugs out, and it didn't surprise me that they didn't look good, considering that the only way to get to those rear ones was to take the intake manifold off. I don't imagine someone would do that on a, you know, for a little weekend job. It's not really that easy to change the plugs. So I had these rusty ones were in the back, and I'm pretty sure these are the original plugs in this thing. And you can tell they're pretty haggard. They're all yeah, pretty gross. So I pulled those ones. They were obviously shot and rusty. I went to pull these front ones. This one was over here. Same thing, really, just blown out. I don't think they'd ever been replaced. The middle cylinder here, I don't remember which one it is, but this is what I found. So my first thought was, well, the timing belt broke, the valve stayed down, the piston came up, hit the valve, bent the valve, hit this, and that's all she wrote. But looking a little more, I was able to find, I had an old brake line laying around here. I wanted to see if this was indeed the cylinder that was stopping at my high point when I would turn the crank. So I went to put the brake line down in there. Just all I wanted was a gauge, you know, something skinny-ish. to put down in there to see if I could watch it come up and down. Like we can drop this in this cylinder and go through the spark plug hole, and I'm hitting the piston. That's a piston. Same thing on this one. Slide down in there. You're hitting a piston. It's solid. There's definitely something there. When I go into this one, it just goes. It goes all the way down there. And getting oil on it. So I blew the piston and smashed everything. Probably my initial theory was the valve got bent and it won't spin, but I'm assuming this thing was just on its last leg. When I started it up and it ran for a second, I guess the valve hit it just right and let her eat. So I'm honestly not gonna waste my time in tearing this thing apart to fix that. This thing needs a whole new motor. But this video is for you guys tearing these things apart. Now you can kind of see what you're getting into. It's not too difficult from this point. I found digging into, like if you were gonna take these heads off to replace the head gaskets or something, your head bolts are down in there on each side, and you're not able to get past these cams. So you've got to take all these bolts off here on these races, and probably take the gear off, take the bracket off. Keep track of where your stuff is at so you can put it back in the same spot, but I'm pretty sure that's the only way you can get down in there to get the head bolts out, unless there's some fancy tool that some engineer thought was a good idea. But for me and what I've got going on, I always got projects here and there. I don't feel like this is worth my time. I could easily make my money back, if not a little more, now that someone knows what they're getting into. And then they can decide to put a new motor in it or just part it out. I mean, it's a good little car, and like I said, the new tires and everything, but what do you do? Live and learn. It's always fun to dig into stuff like this and figure it out for new cars you haven't dealt with. I don't really enjoy the V6 sidewinders like this. The way the transmission and the motor mounts are set up sideways, it's not worth it for me, but this is good for you guys to see all the ins and outs and the guts to see what you're getting into. So I hope it helps somebody out to figure out why their car's not running, and hopefully you didn't snap a piston in half like I did. Full send.